Welcome back, friends, to a much delayed but long awaited for episode of the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Tarot Journal and Cartomancy Radio Reading Hour. I am your forever humble, absurd, weird, goofball host, the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. For those of you who've never tuned in before, this is my tarot dedicated podcast show. It's separate from my other shows, although sometimes I totally forget what I'm talking about and start rambling about one thing inside of the middle of another. But this particular show is actually separated out because no matter what I ramble about, it is ultimately focused on teaching myself tarot and other oracle deck systems in order to see, to test, to verify in an objective, not cynical, but also not, hopefully not biased or predisposed in terms of the outcome. Just a real life, live blogged, live journaled experiment into whether or not a system of oracle as defined by those who created and myself, and as I tinker with the theory behind it, if such a system can be devised that literally helps myself and or others in a positive way, right? So, sounds simple, and yet I've managed to get myself so worked up and so screwed up in the head about this project that I keep tabling it, because I'm quite honestly, folks, a little intimidated by it. But that's a whole ramble for another day. Let's put a pin in that, as I like to say, and let's focus on what we're doing right now, here, today. That almost rhymed. I didn't mean for it to, but there you go. So, previously on this particular podcast, of the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Tarot Journal and Cartomancy Radio Reading Hour, I don't remember which episode, I don't remember where. It may not even be up. I may have just recorded this and never put it up, so I apologize if that's the case. But I'll do a little recap here of whatever that was. But previously on this show, I think I'd introduced and welcomed The Moon Oracle by Carolyn Smith and John Astrup. Also previously on this show, I had written down and defined some rituals that I wanted to do and or use for such occasions. And I have to be really honest with you folks. In the interim that I've been on hiatus for this particular show, despite the fact that I have managed to occasionally record episodes for the other series, the Almost Daily Zencast, on a somewhat regular basis, I tabled this project And in that interim time, I've also relocated. I've completely moved to a different place. Not very far from where I was living, but a very different house. And yeah, my journals and stuff, and some of the materials I had been working on previously, are now somewhere in this new house and yet to be dusted off and brought forth into the center of the table here. So I don't have those at my disposal, and I don't remember them off the top of my head exactly what I did. But I'm going to wing it today, folks, because ultimately, right, not just at the center of my theory conveniently, although that would be very convenient if it was exclusive to my theory, but ultimately at the center of most working theories that I've come across about divination, about any of these divine practices, you might call them, that are about invoking and consulting some higher wisdom or some sort of ethereal source. The words and language varies, but these systems all ultimately, in my opinion, from my limited perspective, from my limited ability to review some of the material out there, they all are contingent or based on or anchored to one's own spiritual intuition. And I like to throw in the word spiritual to that label because I think there's, as with life and with all things involved in life and in the universe, there are multiple layers, or there are multiple things that function in our human experience that we lump together under the singular label intuition, right? And I think it would be savvy of us. I'm sure there are others out there that have a more sophisticated language set or label set for some of these similar but different functionings of the human esoteric environment. But dare I propose, theoretically, for those who have never heard this before, to contemplate and ponder and examine for themselves deep within, right? Because there's nowhere else to look for this besides inside your own heart and inside your own mind. And pause. Well, this is really sort of like an episode, Big Red Pin, for the Almost Daily Zencast. But I'm reminded right now in this moment of a conversation I had with someone online, which is with someone who is a long-standing sort of intellectual friendly rival. They appreciate what I'm trying to do, or the message, the ideas that I share and stuff, and they appreciate my approach and my tactics, etc. They appreciate the direction I'm going in, even, but they just generally disagree in certain technical things, and they like to get down into the weeds sometimes about it because they have a very specific religious belief system, a very specific religious ideology that they're adhering to. And I'm not necessarily turning that into a negative critique or a dismissal. I'm not trying to disrespect them, but we should call those things out for what they are, right? Intellectual models or belief systems, what I like to call constructs or paradigms, ideological constructs or ideological paradigms in our minds can be useful, and they can be accurate, even close to being very close to the truth, but they can also simultaneously prevent us from seeing other things because we're fixated on that shape or this form or this particular narrative or this particular through line, right? Instead of being open to perceiving all the possibilities that are actually available. But I digress. We can get into deep arguments about how belief systems work. And part of the reason I'm doing this particular show is to answer the question, can I approach an oracle system, an oracle deck system, with a sort of belief in non-belief, right? Can I do what is supposedly commonly held as possible with an oracle system, which is to gain a deeper understanding of myself, gain a deeper understanding of the world around me, gain a deeper understanding of reality as it actually functions. Based on these artists' attempt to interpret functions or aspects or facets of reality and how it works, right? It's all interpretive. Let's remember that. But before I spiral out of control, right? This episode isn't about apologetics, which is a technical term, right? In theory building and theory sharing. This episode isn't about the fundamentals of my theory, so let's not get bogged down in the details. This episode is actually meant to be a quick and fast and fun sort of first look at, second 1.5 look. I don't know what you'd call it when it's not quite the first look, but it's not quite the second look. As I mentioned, I previously welcomed this Moon Oracle. For those who haven't heard that, or for just in case I recorded that and haven't posted it, let me share with you a little bit about this deck. It's very interesting and appealing and beautifully designed. It has both fluid artistic elements and well-structured organizational elements or technical elements. And that's always one of those things that I think, based on the art that I see in Oracle decks as I window shop them, or as I work with them, or review them, if I already own them, etc., or as I patiently wait to unbox them. And for the record, friends, I haven't been completely ignoring my decks or this idea or this project. And like I mentioned in the text intro, despite how off this on and off project has been, I have not been able to help myself from occasionally falling victim to what cynics would call simply self-rationalized impulse shopping. And I get that. A materialist just taking a peek inside this room would just point and laugh at the idea of a spiritual collection of commercial products, right? And someone talking about it, giving a chit-chat about this collection of spiritual products. And they're like, yeah, you're just victim to impulse shopping. Perhaps. We do live in a profiteering-centered bullshit system that lies and pretends to be many things, but is ultimately really driven by profit, right? By the gathering and accumulating of wealth. And what you need for that, the way the system works, is something to commodify. Something tangible is easiest. Although people make money off ideas too, which is epic. Can't wait to get into that business. Because I got me some crazy ideas over here. And some funny voices to tell you about them in. So anyways, despite whatever valid or invalid criticisms or commentary from the peanut gallery we might get, I do think I wouldn't be doing this project if I was already convinced that there was no there, that there's nothing worth pursuing. I'm not out to debunk tarot, right? I'm also not previously sign me up. I'm a flag-waving, card-carrying, blind faith believer in oracle systems. I'm not. I've been a skeptical, questioning, spiritual seeker that has always had interesting experiences with tarot. And so, yeah, this deck, which is, by the way, to respect all the rights and privileges, is, according to the box, published by Edison Books Limited, and tragically printed in China. Which I think, let me take a quick look. It's really, really super stupid common, right? Most of everything is made in China or or distributed by a company. This one doesn't tell you on the box, but quick look on the front. I don't see it, but it might be in the book, right? Sometimes the book's a good book. But this first deck, which I may or may not have already introduced to the show, comes in a lovely silver box with a beautiful, captivating full moon illustration. And as you may have noticed, if you're following along with the other shows, I'm a big fan of the moon. And I don't pretend to know all the details and nuances of moon magic or of moon lore. I just literally, in my own personal life, have an eyeball to eyeball, an eye contact relationship with the moon. I like to look at it. I like to acknowledge it. I like to thank it for its mysterious beauty and its blessings it bestows on us. And so I've always been fascinated by the moon and the mystery of its relationship to us. Which reminds me, there's a great reiteration or iteration of the question of the moon and its effects on human beings in meme form. Something along the lines of like, the moon influences the tides, and we're 78% water, and y'all questioning whether or not the moon impacts us. Anyways, it's like, duh. But we may not understand it very well. We may have understood it better in the past. Who knows? I digress. I have, in the course of my personal journey into spiritual subject matter, been intrigued by sort of an absence of moon material. Although it's often referenced, there's a lot of moon iconography. I hadn't seen, up until recently, a lot of books like wholly devoted to the moon. And I'm sure they're out there, right? I just mean that just in that passive sort of let them jump off the shelves at me kind of way. Until maybe about 2 years ago, I came across a book called Moon Magic, and then This Moon Oracle Deck. And so I thought, I love the moon, and I need to know more about what people think about the moon in spiritual terms, and if there's a deck that works with it, I want to have it. So I got it, and I have not fully come to understand this first deck, but I did want to just finish my commentary on what it looks like. It's beautiful, it's stunning. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 suits of moon, and they all have different vegetative qualities. In other words, they relate to plants and natural things. Like the very first one in the blue suit, I don't know what it's formally called, but it's a suit with the blue color. Card 1 is the Crescent Waxing Water Moon, and it's instinct. Ooh, talking about intuition and whatnot, right? So yeah, there's a word, like, are intuition and instinct one and the same? Or are they different functions? There's a question, right? I would posit, as I was trying to stumble through earlier, that there are many layers, as in life, as in reality. There are many layers to the grouping of things that we call intuition or instinct. But I digress. So the card has a beautiful sort of illustrative, abstract artwork that's symbolic of the station of the moon that each card represents, and also to facilitate the understanding of which it has like a moon map at the bottom that's universal to the suits, and the moon has all the stations. This moon map has all the stations, and it's a row of cells or blocks, and at the very leftmost there's like the new moon, or the waxing. Is it waxing when it's growing? The growing moon, right? The crescent. It's the waxing water moon. Duh, I'm looking at the card. So, and then then it's got first quarter, and then it's the next one, which here I am being a moron. I don't remember what it's called, but when it's almost full, and then full, and then the half step between full and the next quarter, and then the waning moon, and then the new moon. So that bar is universal. And on the bottom of the card, underneath the bar, is the singular word. So crescent, waxing water moon is at the top. It has a single word. Ooh, I didn't clearly explain this. It has a word. Each one has a word and a number. So like number 1 it's usually that's centered. This is all the way to the left. In the center is the word shoots, which aligns beautifully with the image and really helps to understand. Like, this represents seedling growth. This represents breaking through after having been planted. This represents, that first stage of growth and that first burst from the null point of a seedling, of just being the seed, rather, into the expansiveness of spreading out the shoots and that will be roots and branches. So it's beautiful. And then it's got a geometric symbol, which I think goes for the whole suit, I guess. And this one's the upside down triangle. So to give an idea, the next suit starts with crescent waxing fire moon. It's got an upright triangle. Its color theme is red as opposed to light blue. So in the light blue suit, all the art correlates beautifully, but integrates all the other colors, which is a savvy thing. It's really well done. These things are the artwork is simultaneously organic, but also very geometric and like a mandala. So it's lovely in that way. And so, the first one shoots. Are they the same all the way? Yeah. Shoot. Let's go through the trajectory of each suit that has in common. So waxing will have the different elements: water, fire, earth, and of course, I think air. Air is yellow, interestingly. Good choice. Air, like sunlight. I'm surprised that isn't light. But then again, we don't call that the elements, right? The light is supreme. It's beyond the elements. So in each suit, it goes shoots, leaves, buds, flowers, fruit, fall, seeds, dormant, right? It makes so much sense. It's beautifully organized. Each suit is lovely this way. Each image, like I was saying, is beautifully organic and geometric. It contains the moon in the image and is also akin to the stages of the seed of life, the flower of life, the tree of life. Each one is, a stage in the vegetative growth of plant life as influenced by the moon, I suppose. Like I said, I haven't worked with this deck very much. I haven't taken a reading from this deck at all. I'm just sort of revisiting it because I want to introduce these two other decks that belong together with it as a set of 3, which I might have to update to a set of 4, but that's a whole nother episode. I'll explain that later. The back half of this deck, which is actually got more cards in it, like the major arcana in a traditional Rider-Waite-Smith has fewer cards in it than the suits, right? But the suits are, in this situation, are bound by the stages of the moon, so that limits them. And so this major, if you were to compare, this major arcana portion of this deck is proportionately larger. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a 72 card deck. And for some reason, I like decks with more cards. And maybe, I guess, the sort of faux amateur statistician in me, the one that's into probability waveform function stuff, understands that the more cards in the deck, the more wild card variable stuff can happen. And then the more significant trends and patterns might be. But I think that even the smallest decks clear that threshold. But I digress. You could do readings, I think, with this deck with just the quote, the portion I'm calling the major arcana. These are all feminine goddesses. Card 1 is musician, right? So each card has a beautiful, organic, yet geometric, mandala-ish depiction of this goddess that's being depicted. It doesn't have a goddess, it's got a name like volcano, musician, palace, stone. But each of these are all depicted with either a woman or with women. Bridge, number 6. Is 2 women connecting in a circular form around a plant and framed by a moon shape. Everything's got organic plants, And then sort of like either depictions of the horizon and the sky or things that evoke seasons. I was going to say everyone's got a circle for the moon, but several of them actually I'm realizing are missing them. They've got curvature there, but like musician has no overt. Oh no, the flowers are in overt circles. Okay, never mind. So yeah, all the circular. 3, the palace. Only the grapes are like circles. There's no. And there's a big dark moon. Okay, and the musician, there's no. It's like the musician. She's dancing in the daylight. Anyways, it goes through to. Oh my God, there's so many of them. And then he gets into like actual, like from abstract goddess names like prisoner, guru, and sleeper, 28, 27, and 26 respectively. Then we get into hectate. Okay, I think this is another group. So we get to 28 named things that are more like aspects, right, of divine femininity. And you guys, you can say this deck has 3 arcanas. The suit arcanas, the minor archetypical arcanas, and the major archetypical arcanas. But here we've got hectate, Kali. These are all named female goddesses. Venus, Artemis, Isis, Hera, Ishtar, Athena, Lilith, Demeter, Freya, and Gaia. And they each have an astrological symbol and a circle that indicates full moon, new moon, and I guess, I'm not sure what the red dot means. Maybe that means harvest moon? Or maybe these have to do with this. No, there's no yellow moon. Well, I look forward to finding out what that means. But it's a lovely deck. And as far as like interesting moon-related divinatory magical work, I sense that someone created an interesting and hopefully powerful system there that takes into account a bit of astrology and astronomy, and then of course other meaningful symbolic imagery of the moon. But here we are, on to the exciting part. We're going to unbox these new, quote, new decks. They're not really new. I've picked them up sometime in the last 2 or 3 years. Since about a year before I started making recordings, I'd already started gathering decks. So, and actually, my whole life, I've always sort of window shopped them and have picked them up and either given them as gifts or, like, I don't remember how long ago I bought my very, 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 quote, first deck for myself. But I've always had a fascination with them, as I've talked about before. And I really genuinely am pleased and excited to finally get around to doing this. I've been, thinking about doing this for quite some time, and letting myself come up with reasons to keep the project, quote, tabled. But to maintain a semblance, a minor remnant of ritual, I'm going to invoke my privileges and rights as a cannabis mystic and spiritualist and smoke a little bit of weed here with you guys. As always, disclaimer, folks, do it smart, do it intelligently. As I ramble about on 1 or 2 occasions on my cannabis talk segment of the Almost Daily Zencast, like, know the rules. Don't smoke like an idiot. If you're going to indulge in recreational cannabis smoking, A, learn about how it hits you, how it impacts you. Learn about the laws that your state and or city have adopted or set up, because it does vary from locality to locality and venue to venue. All right, enough of that. Here we go. Om Shanti Metta Shanti Om Namaste. With gratitude and joy, it is that I welcome this audience, whoever may be listening now or in the future, and whatever spirit guides may be gathering, as I unbox these 2 moon-themed oracle decks and share my first impressions about them and build my energetic relationship with them. By the way, I've literally sort of in half-assed sort of autopilot ritual ceremony style have had these sitting in my office slash magical studio, and on my table, which is my tarot dedicated table. I feel icky calling it an altar just because it triggers people. And I also I believe that the most powerful altar, if I may share this with you guys, I don't know if I've openly said this before on this particular show, but I think that the only real altar, the true altar, the real temple, right, is the temple in the center of our minds / skulls, both literally and figuratively. But we can do a whole episode about that, either here or in the other series. Okay. Om Shanti Metta Shanti Om Namaste. Ho Open Open Satnam. For those who don't know, that's my own sort of private, personal mantra / prayer. Like, it's my metta prayer. It consciously contains all of my healing, positive, prayerful intentions. Everything I could ever bundle together is bundled together in that invented. I've put together those words from existing spiritual holy texts of various origins, as I've talked about in a past episode of the Almost Daily Zencast. And yeah, people are free to borrow it, but if you're going to use it, please look into what it's meant to mean. Like, don't just start saying it and then not know what you're doing, because that's how you should be about all spiritual things. But put a pin in that, because there is an existing episode, and that's not what this episode's about. Okay, so today we're going to welcome the Moonology Oracle Cards by Yasmin Boland, or Boland, I don't know, forgive me for mispronouncing it. Artwork by Nix Rowan. Rowan? I don't know. Forgive me. Yasmin and Nix, if I butchered your last names. So this is published by a company whose work I like, hiatus. I have several hiatus decks. And is it because they're a monopoly? There's at least 4 major publishing companies plus several independents, right? So, but they're strong and they produce interesting, beautifully well-illustrated decks. And I like them. Anyways, some of the back text on the box reads, "The energy of the moon has a formidable effect on our everyday life. Use these gorgeously illustrated oracle cards to tap into her ancient wisdom for healing, guidance, and protection, and learn how to work with her magical energy during each lunation." Lunation. I'm not sure if that means like lunar station. I think that's what that means, right? Lunar station, lunation. It could also be lunar rotation or lunar orientation, but lunar station makes sense. Anyways, namaste and gratitude to Yasmin and Nix for creating it. The box is beautiful. It's got a lovely silver arty font that's silvery, very eye-catchy, and a beautiful watercolor skyline and moonscape, which literally just like 3D leapt off the cover when I first saw it. As the things that I'm compelled to buy often do. And that's what I'm like, I worry that listeners may be like, this guy just has an impulse shopping problem. Because I don't like to spend money. I'm going to explain, probably over-explain, and re-explain as I open this. Here we go. Breaking the seal. I love that sound. Ooh. The box has got a lovely, smooth, svelty kind of texture. I'm also really weird about boxes. Okay, so my shopping thing. I'm not like an impulse shopper. I don't come home with shoes and extra things. In fact, I even rarely come home with extra food from the supermarket, But I am an intuitive shopper. I've always sort of never been quite sure what I need from a store when I go to a store, except I know that I want something from that store. That'll totally happen to me. with a specific store. Or I'll know that I need something to solve a need or a problem, and I'll go try to find it. I miss having lots of great shopping venues all closely packed together. Like I love a good bazaar, a real one, not a janky third tier trash product one. But it's spiraling way out of control. So there's certain things like I'll go to a Barnes and Noble or to a crystal store, like this. I forget where I got this one, but recently these aren't the most recent decks that I bought. The most recent deck that I bought is staring at me from over there, and it's the Rumi Oracle deck by Anna Fairchild, artwork by Rassouli. Rassouli, yeah, Rassouli, and I've seen that deck around for years, and I hadn't seen it on a bookshelf or a store shelf in ages, but I'd seen it get recommended on, like my online shopping over and over again. So I thought it was like probably hard to find in real life, but still available online. And call me a weirdo, but I love walking into a store, whether it's a brand new store I've never been. Like when I'm in a new city I've never been in, I look for bookstores, coffee shops, gem shops, spiritual stores, occult shops, weirdo shops, and secondhand stores, like what's it called when you go, not binge shopping, when you go thrift store shopping. I love those kinds of stores. I like to walk around. And then, of course, the big, giant superplex malls to see what's trending. But I let something... I'm just receptive, and if I feel like I'm supposed to discover something that is useful to me, it will literally like wiggle visually and vibrate and sort of pop like I'm in a 3D movie. I digress. I remember when I get to the unboxing, I usually have an interesting flashback to the visual moment of seeing this, but it's very specific and tightly framed. So I can't quite remember what store it was. It might have been Crystal Cave down in Costa Mesa. Shout out to Crystal Cave in Costa Mesa. They're an awesome spiritual store. If you like that sort of stuff, go drop in and check them out. Tell them I say hi. They don't. They probably won't remember who I am. But here we go. Let's open up this deck. Ooh, on the inside cover of the top of the box, there's a lovely watercolor rendering of moon surface, and then the guidance, let the moon be your guide. That's a lovely use of the inside of the box. All right, so we've got a little white book, right? It's the full size of the deck, so it's not little. I love it when they make them the same size as the deck. I think that's great. It's got an explanation of all the cards, an introduction, and a recommended blessing, a chapter entitled Wisdom of the Moon and Phases of the Moon, and then working cards, how the deck is structured, interpreting the cards, the elements, working with card spreads. And I very much look forward to reading that book. Welcome to the family. Okay. So the first card that you can see, I haven't even taken out of the deck yet. These are all beautifully illustrated in the same artwork, which I assume is Nyx Roan's, as the cover and the inside of the top of the box, which is lovely. I love a good hand-painted watercolor cosmos thing. It's just anything starry night sky. I love that kind of stuff. But it's a big, beautifully illustrated new moon with just the tiniest glimmer of light shimmering at the very edge, right? Against a purpley, starry night sky, a purpley, swirly night sky of cosmic boundlessness. And there's a little band of text at the bottom. So the card is big and the art is bold and clear and simple. and the text is nicely organized and an appropriate size. It doesn't feel too big for the design of the deck, and it doesn't feel too small. And it's direct. New moon, a new start is coming. Actually, that's inverted in terms of top-down order. A new start is coming, in a little swirly thing, and then in a slightly simpler, bolder font, new moon. Ooh. So I always love when the design of the back of the deck the back of the cards is well thought out. And this is a beautiful, simple, it almost looks photorealistic, but it might be a hand drawing. I can't quite tell. That paper band is still on it. I'm trying to get it off. I don't like tearing those. I'm weird. I keep those with the box. Is that weird? Does anybody else have that strange superstition? I like to take the deck out of the band and then put the band and any other sort of, if there's loose, if it's plastic, I throw it away, right? Like sometimes decks come shrink wrapped. I'm not a big fan of that. It's like you shrink wrap the outside and the inside, so much plastic. But this little sort of, cardboard band, I like to put back inside the box. And I usually put the book back inside the box, but I'm going to put this book with the other books. Because I'm actually revamping I'm still not completely done moving all of my tarot-related items into the new office space, even though I've been in this house for over a year now, almost a year and a half. So most of my books and all of my boxes that the decks came in are still in my personal bedroom, in a bookshelf there. Anyways, so yeah. So like the first deck, this goes right into the phases. So we got new moon, waxing crescent moon. And I'm not going to shuffle this for now. First quarter moon, gibbous moon, full moon. And those are beautiful. Disseminating moon. These are all beautifully hand-drawn. Third quarter moon, balsamic moon. And then new moon in Aries. Okay, so those are all generic. Interesting. And then we have astrological signs getting mixed in. New moon in Aries, new moon in Taurus, new moon in Gemini, new moon in Cancer, new moon in Leo, new moon in Virgo, new moon in Libra, Scorpio, etc., etc. So it goes through all of the new moons in, and then repeats Aries for full moon. Dun, 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 dun. Leo, Libra, Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn. Full moon in Capricorn reads, the end of a tough cycle approaches. Oh yeah, I never finished explaining what the back of the deck looks like. God, I just jump all over the place, don't I? The back of the cards has a lovely, I think it's their hand drawing, circular map of the moon cycles. So north and south on the circle, on this little, it's interestingly laid out because it's got a very specific orientation. It's not in the generic form. North and south are the quarter moons. East and west, or left and right on the back of the deck. Left is full moon, right is new moon. So you can imagine that cycle. So we get through all the full moons, and then we have new moon eclipse, full moon eclipse. Then we have waxing moon, waning moon, void of course moon. I'm not sure what that one is. Cardinal moon, the fixed moon, the mutable moon, the super moon, a blue moon, the south node, which I only recently learned about nodes, and the north node. I recently learned about those when I picked up the Moon Magic book, like 2.5 years ago. More than that, like 4 years ago. Anyways, welcome to the family, Moonology deck. You're beautiful. I can't wait to work with you and to read through your author's system and understand how you work, and then synthesize that into my evolving theoretical system of probability waveform-driven multi-deck oracle consultation. I still haven't found a good technical label, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so I'm putting this new deck into one of the pouches or sleeves that I'm using for my system, and I just went to Michael's. So I'm like, hey, what's the simplest solution for this, right? When I realized I had a collection of decks for a reason, like I've got to figure out how to store them and transport them all and be able to work with them easily. And while many people love to keep their decks in the boxes, what I find tragic about that in the long term is that toting them around in the boxes means you put those boxes in bags or in another box or on a tray, or you just carry them around like a friend of mine does. Those boxes will get the shit beat out of them. Pardon my language. And some people think that's... And I accept this about other things, like antique things that are a little beat up, charm. The tragedy is these are paper products, right? And so that eventually becomes lack of functionality. Eventually a box fails to be a box if it gets boxed around too much. Also, because this is all about artwork, to me, like the very fact that I'm only buying decks, I'm only acquiring decks for this purpose that speak to me in that esoteric, spiritual, like they wiggle and they're like, they express as inanimate objects that they need to share something with me. Now, I'm a person who is comfortable saying that about inanimate objects. And mind you, the vast majority, 98.999% of inanimate objects don't do or quote-unquote say anything ever. But occasionally books, obviously tarot decks, and other interesting, energetically attenuated objects that are created by their creators. In other words, mass-produced objects rarely do this, although sometimes they do, but it's extremely rare. But handmade objects, or, obviously tarot decks is some sort of crossover thing where it's neither handmade, but it's not handmade, but it's also mass-produced. But it transcends those two things because it's consciously intended to, in my theory, I think I attribute this to the creators of decks. It is artwork, not, although it is mass-produced, it transcends its mass production by being artwork that is consciously intended to be energetically attenuated and to be used for energetic, spiritual purposes. Am I crazy cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for thinking that? We'll find out. At any rate, welcome to the family. Moonology, thank you for being here. You're beautiful. I'm just sort of placing hands on it for a brief second to sort of share with it my energy and to ground it with its sister decks. All right, moving on. I said this would be a quick and short episode. We're rambling on for days. Let's wrap this up with the unboxing of the final one. Oh, why am I interested in threes? Well, everything in my world that is magical seems to want to operate in 3 sets of 3. So I'm realizing that I've been unconsciously gathering decks, and I now need to consciously find the 3 sets of 3 patterns. And I've already started working on that. And there's some decks that don't quite fit, and I haven't quite figured out what to call. And but there's several other decks that fit really nicely together in sets of 3. So I need to do a little bit more work on that, and then we'll do an episode about it. But this new deck, which is the
the third in a set of 3 that is very pronouncedly about the moon. This is called Black Moon Astrology Cards by Susan Shepard. And there's no artist name given. So Susan Shepard, I guess, created the images. It is published by Blue Angel Publishing. It's designed in Australia, but printed in China. I don't know how I feel about those. That fact. There's so many decks that are printed in China that I don't know if I should make us think about boycotting them. Like, we should all boycott China, right? Theoretically. But anyways, that's a political subject. We'll put a pin in that. Come back to it, hopefully someday in a political episode of Good Morning Trumptopia or something. Trying to get us a start here on the peeling of the shrink wrap. This is pretty serious shrink wrap, folks. There you go. Alright. So, this box, very curiously, does not have a moon on it. I remember when I first found this box, I couldn't read what the image was. That's one of the reasons why it stood out. I saw moon, and then I saw astrology in terms of like my visual scan of the cover of the box. And then I tried to make out the image, and it was like clouds, but moon, but like stars rather. There's no moon. And then I saw, like, I got some, like, oh, okay, wait a minute. There's more going on here. There's a mythological statue that's sort of photoshopped into the cosmological background of clouds and stars. And there's also very subtly some sacred geometry, like, inscribed or, superimposed there. And then there's some kind of ancient medallion or something up in the corner, but I don't know what that imagery is about. And, it does seem to be emblematic of what the cards are going to look like. So this is a 52-card deck drawing on the ancient discipline of interpreting the night sky. It will give you access to tangible wisdom contained in the heavens above. The movements of the planets, the luminaries, and the stars reflected in happenings on Earth and influenced our lives and bodies. Now, so reading a little bit closer, I'm like, is this more of an astrology deck? Do I need to get a different moon deck to go with this moon triptych? Because I have other astrology decks. In fact, they're sitting right over here because I need a third astrology deck, right? And I forget what the names of these decks are. I don't have them right in front of me. I mean, I have the decks themselves, but not the boxes. But one of them I think is called just astrology, and the other one I forget. But it's a cool one. I've introduced before and talked about on the show, I believe. But it's got all the different houses and stuff. So this one's an interesting toss-up deck. We're going to find out right now as we unbox it for the very first time and find out which column it most correctly sits in. Should it be in the column of moon oracles or in the column of astrological oracles? All right. Inside we've got a big giant white piece of paper, and that's to protect the cover of the book, right? Which I always understand. That's always neat. Keeping that in the box. Then we've got a nice big book that's bigger than the deck. I was worried that the deck would be the same size as the book this time. And the book is the full size of the box. And it's a pretty big box. And then the deck here. Let's keep you right there. This might be more of an astrology thing. Interesting. Black Moon astrology cards. It's a crossover. It sits right at the center. Introduction and suggested card spreads, card meanings. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Neptune. Oh yeah, this goes right through Mercury retrograde and void of course moon. Does it have the nodes? Well, the first sentence of the introduction certainly clarifies that it's a little bit more towards astrology than it is about the moon. The time has come for an oracle deck which draws on the ancient and existent principles of astrology. Astrology is the oldest form of divination in the world and is both a science and an art. Okay. The Black Moon Astrology Cards deck is based on the ancient esoteric principle of as above, so below. Okay. What are the Black Moon Astrology cards? The 52 divination cards are based upon the most important placements of a horoscope, making the Black Moon Astrology cards quite an in-depth astrological deck. However, they don't need to be you don't need to be an astrologer to read these cards. The deck is designed to make the principles of astrology accessible to all, and it can therefore be read just as simply as any oracle deck. Okay. Here we go. The deck can be divided into 3 parts. The first part is dedicated to the planets and the lights, and consists of 12 cards, including the Black Moon Lilith card. Interesting. The second part is dedicated to the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 12 houses of astrology, and consists of a total of 24 cards. The third and final part of the deck consists of 16 cards dedicated to the finer points of astrology, and includes the elements, the lunar nodes, eclipses, the part of fortune, and that's capital P, capital F, the part of fortune, particular aspects, planetary returns, Mercury retrograde, and the void of course moon. Some information on each of these areas follows. The planets and the lights, cards 1 through 11. The elements, cards 37 through 40. The nodes, cards 41 to 42. The eclipses, cards 43 to 44. Part of fortune, card 45. Aspects, cards 46 through 48. Returns, 49 through 50. Mercury retrograde, 51. And void of course moon, 52. Interesting. It's such a crazy crossover nexus situation, because it can literally be in either or. Like if I didn't have already 2 other decks that were astrologically oriented, I would be like, yeah, sure, put it in the moon column. But because I do, I'm like torn. I don't know which one I should do. But let's take a quick glance. This is what I call a medium-large deck. It's got a plastic band, which I'm less happy about. And this is very glossy. Sometimes I'm not a fan when decks feel like plastic, but sometimes I am. And I find it interesting which one, like, it's always curious when some decks are like very gloss. They feel like they're laminated. All right, the Solar Eclipse Revolution. As long as they work, right? As long as they don't, like, as long as that doesn't interfere with a good shuffle and a good letting loose of the probability waveform function, then it's fine, I suppose. But I do infinitely prefer when the cards feel less plasticky. But these are beautifully rendered. They are very much like the cover, sort of like photoshopped montage of real objects. And the cover for the box and the book is apparently card 21, Sagittarius, I see. That's what it says, Sagittarius, squiggly line, I see. Capricorn is I use. Interesting. Aquarius is I know. All right. So they're very interestingly arranged. I mean, they're very interestingly designed cards, and their arrangement, while specific, isn't depicted graphically. Like with the very first Moon deck, there was 4 suits for each, one for each element, and each suit dealt with, the cycle. And here, like, there are different sections, and they each deal with a specific thing. But those, although there are numbers, so you can find them specifically, and words, so you know which one you're looking at. Yeah, like you can tell the difference between the 12 signs and the 12 houses, because it's house versus the name of the sign. But otherwise, there's no delineating graphic design to tell you visually, like, oh, this is an element card, or you have to really read it, which is fine. There's no better or worse. But it does resemble, this deck, at looking at it, in terms of what it depicts, resembles the very, very first astrology deck that I got, that is very specifically about the 12 signs and the 6 houses or whatever. And the name of it escapes me because I don't have the boxes set up on my bookshelf, which I'll have to come back to as a whole episode and discuss. But put a pin in that. So, anyways, regardless of the confusion and the bizarre interestfulness, I will now have to make a decision about which collection, because I've had these, sitting around kind of in patterns, waiting to get put together and then inserted into their home in the travel boxes. Fascinating. This feels like it belongs with the astrology decks more than with the moon decks. Because the other 2 moon decks are really, really, really hardcore about the moon. So I guess we're going to leave... I think we're going to run with that for now. And I say that as I try to put this... I said it was a medium-large deck, but it's actually big enough that it may not want to fit in its sleeve pouch that I want to use. And here we go. Get in there, buddy. You'll like it. It'll be fun. I talk to them sometimes. Totally do. But I talk to most of my inanimate objects. Like when I work on my computer, I have conversations with it, Like, come on, buddy. We can do this. We can... There we go. So this deck is big enough that I have to split it up into little portions to get it in, to slide into the pouch. I can't get the whole deck all at once. It gets in its own way. And I'm concerned that it may get to that critical squeeze level. And here the problem is that it's super wide. Yeah, it just barely fits. There's a number of these, and I love a nice oversized deck, but there's not a lot of here's my problem. I want a uniform system, so I want all the decks in the same kind of pouch. And I've landed on this gossamer, almost see-through pouch, because then I'm I know what I'm looking at, right? I can see the backs of the decks and read them very clearly. And I get these pouches in bulk. They come in bundles of 12 or 15 or something at Michael's in the wedding knick-knack department. But my problem is they're just big enough to be plenty big for your average sized deck. And so smaller than average sized decks will fit kind of goofy and big and like swim around in these pouches. And decks like this one that we just opened that are just big enough and just thick enough. And I'm talking about the actual like millimeter density of the individual cards. Like that the deck barely fits in the pouch. It looks like it's gonna bust a seam. And I've got a handful of those for which I'm not sure what the solution is because they sit up so sad and they're such a pain in the butt to get in and out of the sleeve that I've got to do something. But I don't want to have some cards, some decks in these sleeves and some decks in other sleeves. I already kind of have one of those. My root chakra deck it's a square deck and it's super wide and it will not fit in the white sleeved ones. But I randomly found at a fabric store once when I was first looking for a solution to this. I think it was somebody was selling these, and they're the same construction as the white wedding themed ones that I get from Michael's, but they're a little bigger. And I wish I could find like a rainbow of colors, because I could use a color coding system of these drawstring, see-through. I think they're probably like nylon or something. They're not the most organic of materials, but what's cool about it is that they're tough, they're strong, they keep the decks. They're also kind of pretty because they glisten a little bit. And you straight clear up see. Like I can read the text, of this Mudra deck. Root Chakra, Muladhara. I can never pronounce those. And I can see the artwork. But I digress. I never did find more of this particular version of this anywhere else. Because this lady had a little basket. And I don't know where she got them from. And I doubt that they're like handmade, but they could have been, I guess. And in theory, that would probably be the best solution, is to like figure out how to stitch these together and then make my own. So that everybody is in, like when I say everybody, I mean each deck is in a deck, then they feel comfortable and they're not like super tight. Oh yeah, like in the same alley, to wrap up the show, the first time I ever found this problem was when I was putting some decks into these pouch sleeves the very first time I got them from Michael's. And my my Toth Tarot, or my Crawley deck, Crawley, it's so big. Like the mediums, there's like a pocket travel edition, and then there's like the regular edition, and then there's the oversized edition, right? The regular size edition is so big. I think this is the regular size edition. In part because they really wanted the art to stand out. And the artwork in that deck is intense and weird and of a specific era and stuff. But it's totally so big that it would not fit in a singular pouch, that I split them up. I have the major arcana in one pouch and all the rest of it in a separate pouch. And the minor arcana alone, right? The 4 suits, like, it sits in that pouch like it's gonna bust the seam. And it is brutal and sad. But anyways, I digress. I'll have to look around to see if anyone else out there is manufacturing these for this particular purpose. And see if I can't get them in other colors. But for now, I think that's what I've been going on for over an hour. Man, I thought this was going to be short and quick, and it always ends up being, an hour and 10 minutes. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. I'm excited to work with these decks in the future. And I'm also excited that I've got to keep an eye out for a third moon deck. Because I've got my 3 astrology decks now. Huzzah. Been wondering when I would figure that out. And I hadn't seen like a deck with the word astrology until recently. I saw 2 Vedic astrology decks, which is its own thing, right? So that's a whole nother episode. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you for tuning in, folks. And until next time, may the cosmos and the fractal fields around you align in harmony. And may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart. Thanks for listening. I know this was just a random, I just talked about these 3 decks and did absolutely nothing but that. But there's actual progress being made and actual momentum building towards returning to podcasting about tarot and about actually casting questions and dealing with layouts and learning how to, work this divinatory system that I am inventing as I learn it. If that isn't challenging and fun enough to be worth listening to, I don't know what is. Anyways, as always, thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned in, because hopefully, knock on wood, I'm now really actually positioned and primed to do a lot more episodes, a lot more often, both for this show and for all the segments of the Almost Daily Zencast that you love and enjoy, like the bibliomancy episodes, right? I'm going to be doing new episodes of unauthorized and explicit readings very soon, and reading from new and interesting books. I'm also going to be doing... I'm excited to announce, folks, and it's wishy-washy of me to do it right at the end of an episode, as I'm trying to wrap it up so I don't ramble on for very much longer at 71 minutes and 44 seconds. But I'm excited to announce that some new voices, some actual other people will be joining me for all the podcast things. And we've already been kind of tinkering and experimenting and recording random shit, but we're now going to focus in, and I'm going to be having them on some live episodes and stuff. So tune in for that. And as always, thanks for your support. Until next time, this has been the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.